You should say it.
I don't know if the mics are on, but we're going to go ahead and get started.
It's very good.
Okay. Okay, welcome to our joint study session. We're having a study session with, our special guests, the planning board. And, the planning board I have a brief overview that I wanted to share with everyone regarding what the South Platte Working Group is doing, because it really does combine what council's goals and objectives are and where we're headed with what some of the stuff that you guys are looking at. And the group is, as you know, meeting and has been meeting now for, I guess, coming up to almost a year, South Platte Working Group 2. And so I want to just give everybody just a brief background on that and then let you know where we're headed, what's going on. If you have any questions, I'll answer those after. The South Platte Working Group was, as most of you know, was originally formed in 2005, and the intention was at that time to really acquire open space and with the intention of enhancing recreational opportunities along the South Platte River and adding connectivity, cleaning up some of the more distressed areas. And so that was an incredibly successful effort, and we were able to buy a substantial amount of property. We had great funding at that time. We also had great property values because as the market went down, people were willing to sell, and so we got some great deals. We have a number of properties that we have currently put a master plan on, and that's been approved, and those are projects that are going to be developed into different levels of recreation: Murray Open Space, Lee Gulch, and the Oxbow. And that was a real public process done by a group named Alta, and in conjunction with South Suburban. So the 2012 group of the South Platte Working Group is scaled down a bit. The other group had members from Greenwood Village and Cherry Hills Village. This group consists of the municipalities of Littleton, Inglewood, Sheridan, and Columbine Valley. And we are really working, the primary focus is the stretch of the South Platte through Arapahoe County. Our primary efforts going forward with this group are to integrate economic development along the river with recreation and include the health of the river in it. So we have really three directives. One is that we want to definitely enhance the economic development opportunities along the river, where we believe that all three of the cities have great opportunity that we're not taking advantage of at this point. We also definitely feel like the recreation in the river, which we obviously combine to help a great partnership with economic development, and then the health of the river. And that's something that we have already started work on that with a river restoration project that we've started the phase 1, which actually has been approved by urban drainage, and finishing up getting some permitting on that, and hopefully we'll start seeing that start and finish before we hope we have a spring flow. But one of the things that the group has decided is that because we have the 3 municipalities that touch the river primarily, each of us have some ideas along that in our own areas of what we'd like to do. And so what we have done with because Will Singleton is our facilitator. He was our facilitator with the first group, and some of you may be familiar with him. He works with our all of the other working groups, Cherry Creek and the Highline. And he has worked with some select members from the group, put together an RFP, put it out to master planners who work on outdoor river type of things. We've, I think, Craig, your group is actually one of the 3 finalists. So that RFP went out, and on Thursday we'll be hearing the presentations from those 3 groups, and then the South Platte Working Group will select one of those to then execute a master plan. And that master plan process will be pretty elaborate. We'll have a substantial amount of public input. We'll have a lot of stakeholder input. There'll be a lot of planning around the different needs and desires of the cities. We do have a pretty healthy budget for it. Arapahoe County came with $5 million again, and each of the cities have their open space funding. So we do have money for what we're doing. We do also realize that this is a very more long-term plan, particularly because a couple of things that we want to do are in the tens of millions of dollars. And so those things take a little while to do. The other thing is when you're working in the river, you're dealing with a whole lot of people who have rights and who have easements, and then you're dealing with the Army Corps, and all of that stuff adds time and layers to everything. But that is also part of working with these master planners and their relationships with those entities, so that once we get going on this, we'll have our plan and we'll march through. A couple of the things that I want to just be focused a bit for you on Littleton. I'm going to pass around some pictures. When we were in Breckenridge 2 summers ago, I guess, for the CML conference, I took quite a few pictures of the river there. And for those of you that have been there, you've seen when you go to town the Blue River that runs through town and what they've done with that. And it is a great combination of creating activity areas and then creating quiet respite areas where the river, literally you can't even get into the river. They've got the banks built up with a lot of trees and rocks, and so the river gets a rest. And then a little further down you have another area where there's rocks in the river that are specifically stationed in a strategic way of specific heights and sizes so the kids can play on them. You've also got great grassy knoll type of steps that go down that people can sit on and enjoy. It's easy walking, it's easy access for all ages, all abilities. And we have a couple of places along the river where something like this would be very appropriate. One of the areas that we're looking at is the Riverside Downs area, where you have, where the Celtic Tavern, and I think it's the Celtic Tavern and Jack and Jill are really the ones that back up to it. But behind that, we've got a bike store, we've got fast food places, we got coffee shop and a yogurt place, and all of these things that are attractive to trail users who may want to stop and take a break, but nobody really knows they're back there. And we've talked to the folks over there, and they really want to find out how they can be more a part of that, and how it can be an asset for them, and they can be an asset for that. And that whole area there really lends itself well to having a nice space. We've talked about how we can make that, how we can enhance that. And that's going to be part of the master plan too, which is part of where it brings in that economic development, combines it with the recreational, and then also keeps in mind the health of the river along there, where we've got, the Celtic Tavern's kind of cool. They've got a whole bunch of fishing poles by their patio doors. So if you feel like on a summer afternoon, you waiting for your dinner, you can go out there and fish. But there's probably no fish because the way that the river's spread out like that. So creating little areas where the fish will hide. And so that's one of the areas that we're looking at. That's probably the most expensive one that Littleton has on the table at this point. Another one is just some trail improvements. There's a intersection. It's really a T at Mary Carter and Little's Creek. Very, very dangerous. There is very poor visibility if you're coming off of Little's Creek onto Mary Carter. If you are coming down Mary Carter, you cannot see somebody at Little's Creek trying to get on. It's not a safe situation. So that's an area where we would look at improving safety. The Carson, Alta Aspen Grove area, one of the things that we feel has happened over there with Alta Aspen Grove is that it has really obstructed, it's for lack of a better word, I think it's really kind of destroyed the feel and the vision as you're coming down that trail, as you're riding or you're walking or you're running, and all of a sudden these buildings just come out of nowhere. So we're looking at putting in a urban forest in there, and based on where you plant the trees, it will hide a lot of those buildings. It's also probably a good project in so much as with the disturbances and with the park and stuff, it provides a whole new place for wildlife to kind of settle down and nest, etc. Another one that we have on our list is the Fire Training Center, and that is something that at some point, probably sooner than later, it will be sold, and upon the sale, the South Platte group wants to buy that. It's very, very close to the river. It has great access to Big Dry Creek and to Mary Carter, so there's a way that we can add maybe a sort of a trailhead there. It's next to the Murray property, so there's a lot of good combinations over there. There's really not viable property for anybody else. It's set way back, and it's kind of a mess right now, too. Then we're looking at some other things, some access out of the river where tubers and stuff come down the river and then go to South or Platte River Bar and Grill. It's very difficult to get in and out of the river. That's one of the problems with our river, is that there are not a lot of good in-out places. And so if people do want to recreate on the river, kayak or tube, it becomes real challenging to get out. Keep going, get to Denver. And then there's also some signage issues and some trailhead issues that we want to deal with. Those are some minor tweaks. But and then I guess one of the last project that we're looking at is, for lack of a better name, we're calling it Happy Trails. And it is, in essence, probably a 4, maybe a 6-month program on a trail safety, trail education, can't we all just get along program out there, where we've seen an increasing number of people using the trail and an increasing number of multimodal uses of the trail. And over the years, I think that there's just been a degradation of courtesy. And some of it is people don't know what kind of the trail rules are. Others may just be ignoring them. A lot of people do know what they are, but they're not. People aren't calling when they pass them anymore, so then they don't call when they pass. And just different things like you shouldn't have your dogs on a retractable leash. It's a 6-foot leash. A lot of people don't know that. Little things like that. How does a family safely navigate that trail from one end to the other while there's on a busy Saturday? How do people get out there and play well together? So we're putting together a pretty extensive campaign. We are looking at working with the same people who put together the master plans for the 2 communities, or the 3 communities, the Alta group. They have a great program. They've done this quite a bit throughout. They did give us a proposal. It's very impressive. They have a 5-tier approach. It's called the 5 E's, and they are evaluation, engineering, education, encouragement, and enforcement. And so their plan has applied what they would do to each of those levels. And it's exactly what we were looking at, what we were hoping they would come up with. So because it really is, it's an opportunity to not only create some ways that trails can be safer out there, but it's also how do we enforce good behavior, how do we enforce bad behavior, and how do we educate the users as to what is the etiquette out there. So this is going to be something, we're going to have some big kickoffs, some large events, and then we'll have ongoing throughout the summer. Start it in the spring, and then throughout the summer we'll have the occasional weekends where we have some enforcement going on and rewarding good behavior type of things too. So we have great interest from bike groups, from running groups, from bike shops, from animal welfare folks, you name it. We've got everybody who has a great deal of interest in participating safely out there. They want to help us with this project. So I think it's going to be great. And it's going to be something that we're going to do ongoing. It's not going to be one time this year and then we're going to stop it. So that will be part of the plan on this, is how do we keep this continuing along. Bruce?
You may have said it and I missed it, but given
South Suburban's involvement with the whole trail system. They're part of the working group, and they're teed up with all of these activities so that there's, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And South Suburban, we met with them, and we had 2 proposals. And so after meeting with both those groups, one of the people who was given a proposal, actually, Bob Sears, I don't know if, Cerns, he actually just kind of determined it was a little too big in scope for him, but he wanted to be involved, so he and Alta got together, and they're going to use him as a consultant on the job. So
Okay.
and I think Michael's meeting with Dave to go over some of this on Friday. So yeah, everybody's hooked in, and it's also funding partners too. So, Bill.
It's not really meant to be a wet blanket, but at the Dr. Cog board workshop, Marjorie Sloan was there who's the mayor of Golden, and they have Clear Creek that goes through Golden, that's there, and they refer to it as in climate adaptation, but their public use of the river last summer with kind of extra warm weather and that. There were a lot of people that used it inappropriately. Trash ended up being there. Folks that were coming down to cool down by the river, which was kind of nice on one side to see it as a gathering place, but the activities were such. And so maybe you could carry the message to touch base with the folks in Golden and see what their summer experience was last summer and opening it up, because now they're talking about going the other direction and swinging the pendulum in the other way.
Okay. So, Bruce.
When appropriate, could I just take a minute to talk about the Highline Canal also?
Yeah.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions regarding this? Okay. Just thought to give you guys kind of a where we're at, what we're doing. And I will keep you updated in terms of the master plan, which I do think that the group will make a decision on Thursday, and then we'll get that started. We do want to keep this moving, and I think the group had consensus that we didn't want to drag this process out. We know we can move it along faster than, 2 years later we have something. So as things become gelled together, I'll keep you guys looped in on all of that. Okay. Do you want to talk about it now? Okay.
Yeah. Just the other major expenditure of Arapahoe County open space in Littleton will be, I think, if timing works, directed toward the Highline Canal. The Highline Canal Working Group is trying to take the 71 miles of the Highline Canal from where it leaves Waterton Canyon to basically where it exits out east and north, and turn it into a 71-mile linear park, and to try to apply the same kinds of standards that you would if you had an acre here or two of a park, and say, how do we do it with 71 miles? In Littleton, it means that we're fortunate because we still have some overhead cover. Not all the canal does, but it's all dated and it's going to die. So there's a very serious effort being looked at how to maintain overhead cover and how to plant in 5, 10, 15, 20-year phases enough to keep the Highline Canal the way we like it. I think that's important for us to know, just as an amenity in the city that people choose to build houses around and add on to and those kinds of things. It also goes through several different kinds of residential zoning. The other is there are places where the canal intersects with roads that could either could be improved to be some kind of a turnout or parking spot. For instance, right at the corner of Bannock and Ridge, where pretty close to the shopping center there, the canal kind of meanders alongside of Ridge and then heads on down south. Well, Grandpa's Acres is right there. There's an opportunity maybe to do something to give it an access there. There's 2 places down in South Park where actually the business people built the bridges that go over, and they're going to give those up as their special district there goes away. Somebody needs to pick that up. And so there are some amenities and issues that will be involved in this. And from a planning point of view, what I did want to say for sure is Denver Water has stated very specifically water isn't going in that canal anymore as far as they're concerned. It's no longer feasible. And they're fine with the working group figuring out how to do the trail that goes alongside and all the things that I've just talked about. But there's another agenda being worked here to perhaps turn it into a wastewater drainage, or not wastewater, stormwater drainage. Thank you, not wastewater. Stormwater drainage. That would be good. Stormwater drainage, and for the from the planning points of view, that's been a linear barrier all the time. Always, the drainage had to figure out how to get west across Littleton and get past the canal. There may be an opportunity in the future here that it could be used to transport stormwater. So just let you know about that.
Well, urban drainage and flood control is already doing that in areas of the High Line where they're diverting stormwater over to the canal so that the water will run through the canal for a certain amount of time, 2, 3, 4 days. They're diverting it partly out of detention ponds that are on their sites. So it's kind of an experiment they're working on, but it's so far been very successful and well received by the trees along the trail. Okay, so Craig,
Okay.
your hour starts now.
Well, thank you. All right, well, hopefully we won't need a full hour. We don't really have a formal presentation. We'd like this to be more of a conversation with council. But we're here to really update you where we're at with the comprehensive plan. We've been working on it since, I guess, about spring last year, so we're coming close to a year. I think it's on schedule. The inputs, the ingredients that have gone into this are fairly robust, and I think you've had a chance to review the draft of the vision statement that was circulated to you the other day, and that's really been boiled down from a lot of inputs. And first, working with Glenn and Dennis, planning staff, they've given us a lot of the sort of core elements in the framework to start with last year. And then, as you know, we went through the Inspire Littleton process with the community with 5 outreach meetings. And Dennis gave me the numbers here. I think we had about 200 people come to those meetings, and we had 1,300 folks total provide input through both the website and those sessions. Including a visible presence at Western Welcome Week, Wild on Littleton, and some other events. So we've had a very good response. Plus, there was also the citizen survey that went out that's an ingredient. So we've had all these inputs coming in. And then in the Inspire Littleton website, which the Mind Mixer, I think, Dennis, 300 pages of comments, which were distributed to planning board, thankfully not to council, so you wouldn't have to digest those as well, but I'm sure you're welcome to them if you'd like them. But we've had them sort of summarized, boiled down into, what are some of the key issues that the community wants. And again, these are all ingredients into what you see in a fairly brief, concise document. Then at the planning board level, we've had study sessions just about every meeting. So we meet twice a month. We haven't had a lot of hearings until recently, and so we've had a lot of time to digest the inputs and give feedback to staff who've kept coming back to us with drafts. And we're now at a point where we're reviewing these sort of final drafts of the overall statement and trying to determine what level of detail should go into the comp plan and how it directs the next steps. We see this as sort of an evolving process where this is not the be-all and end-all document, but it establishes a framework for future more detailed planning at the area level. So, for instance, we will come out of it with some recommendations to prepare a Santa Fe South Platte corridor plan, a Broadway corridor plan, a Littleton Boulevard corridor plan, as part of our work sessions. And we actually had a retreat one day at the museum. We did some mapping exercises, and we broke out in groups, and we looked at the maps and said, okay, well, we know that the neighborhoods are good, generally want to remain the way they are, But there are areas that we'd call areas of change that we should focus our efforts on, and the comp plans, policies, and goals should identify those areas and start to proactively direct what happens in those areas. And at the forefront, and sort of coincidental and consistent with the South Platte River planning, that came to the top. That should really be Littleton's front door. And along with that, some of the corridors, potential redevelopment of shopping centers along Littleton Boulevard that support downtown, how to address issues along Santa Fe and Broadway and other places as well. So the plan will identify these sort of areas of stability and areas of change, areas that should remain the way they are, and areas that we should really focus our attention on. So what I think we could use from council at this point is, A, did we miss anything out of what you've seen? B, sort of how robust or what level of detail, how bold should this plan be? And we'd like to hear that sooner rather than later. I mean, if you had a chance to look at it and you tell us tonight, that'd be great, because we're on sort of a schedule now where we'd like to get this before council in June, is it?
Well, right. I think we do want to get close to the framework here, go back out to some of the same folks that we met with before. And so we think potentially this summer would be a chance where we would have actual public hearings. I think that's our tentative schedule at this point.
So it's an aggressive schedule. It still is. It's a big task. And again, it's the level of detail. The words become very important at this higher level, making sure that we all are sort of on the same page as far as what they mean. In this document, it's only 2.5 pages long. We're not exactly sure, the planning board's not exactly sure what the final document, whether it's going to be a 10-page document or a 30-page document, whether it rolls in the existing neighborhood plans as part of it, or whether it suggests that they be updated. That level of detail hasn't been figured out yet, but it's generally organized around 3 parts, and I'll talk a little bit about the first part, and then Jennifer Ranville and Randy Dusen, we're going to just give a 5-minute overview of each piece. So the first part is the vision, and we spent quite a bit of time developing that. I think it's fairly concise. It's what we heard from the community. I don't really want to read it. I think I'd like to get right into sort of the overriding goals, and again, without getting into the strategies, because I think you can read down there. There are 4 what we would consider transformative goals, and they were an outdoor Littleton, really focused on that concept of building, capitalizing on the natural resources that we have here, not only the river, but the beautiful views and the topography and the built form of the city as a place that people are attracted to, will be attracted to as a place they want to live. Especially the younger generations really come to Colorado, come to this area, and want to live in this area and work in this area because it has such great access to the outdoors. So that was really sort of I think we all had really strong agreement that the concept of improving, enhancing our outdoors should be a major goal. Then a dynamic Littleton, which really gets into, thanks for the iPads, by the way. I'm still trying to figure out how to use mine. This is about the embracing change, the idea that yes, Littleton is a mature city. It's fairly well built out, but there are really good opportunities for change. It is changing, whether we like it or not, and how do we direct that change so that it makes the livability of the city even better than it is now? And that includes the economic development piece. It includes the walkability of streets. and sort of the aesthetic portions of it, and also the transitions from the neighborhoods to the areas that support the neighborhoods, the streets and the urban centers that we have. The third item is connected Littleton, which, as you all know, land use and transportation are very closely connected. We can't have one without the other. They don't work one without the other. And so this is about how people get from A to B. And we've had a lot of discussion about enhancing, improving walkability, bikeability, but also supporting the fact that a lot of people drive, and you still need to support that infrastructure as well. So it's what we call sort of a multimodal, I guess that's technical planner jargon, but a multimodal system that also embraces the fact that we are fortunate enough to have 2 light rail stations, so there are transit options as well. So connected Littleton is a core goal. And then distinctive Littleton, which, it's the place we know and love, we identify with it as home. What are those things that are essential to preserve the historic core, those things that are sort of place-making elements that make Littleton different than Englewood or Golden or Denver. Again, there's several strategies that are listed under there that we think start to establish a roadmap to get there. Now, the next level below this, you might look at the downtown area plan that we did last time as another level of a detail where you have specific goals and strategies and policies below the goals that get into a lot of detail. And I think the concern here with keeping this comp plan at a high level is that those very specific strategies get dated very quickly. And this is a generation-long document. It's got to be, well, the last one was 81, right? So 30 years, 20, 25.
It won't go quite.
Yeah. We definitely recommend that it be updated, say, 5 years.
They said that 15 years ago.
But if we keep it at the right level, and Glenn and Dennis are doing a great job trying to help us, stay at that right level, it transcends the changes that happen from year to year, and provides some flexibility for interpretation based on the times we're in and the economy that we're in and so on. So we definitely want to hear your thoughts on that. And with that, I'd like to turn that over to Jennifer. I think you're next. Jennifer Ramphel's going to talk a little bit about what we're calling the transformative perspective.
Yes, the transformative perspective. And there we've outlined 3 areas, and the first one is welcoming change. And we believe that welcoming change is really going to be necessary to achieve our collective vision and goals. The comp plan is a useful tool to anticipate and direct positive change. And so, for example, we see the 3 primary corridors in Littleton changing. So the South Santa Fe corridor, we've got the Littleton Boulevard and Broadway corridor, that those are areas of change. And we're already seeing that, as well as our downtown Littleton. That's another area of change, too. And even in the last 3 months, the planning board has had projects, as well as council, that we've seen that play out within our community. And so really it's looking at balancing that preservation with new development. And this is an area that is hard for many residents of Littleton. To be open to new development, new ideas of envisioning the city. And so it's one of those areas we wanted to highlight, is to be open to listen, to hear out those new ideas, new development opportunities for change. The second is to strive for sustainability, and we're looking at it twofold. both the economic stability of sustainability of our community and environmental sustainability, too. From the citizen survey, it came out fairly loud and clear that economic development is very important, and to attract and retain jobs, people can live and work in the city, they can shop in the city, so that we have that economic generation within our city and supporting our residents. The environmental sustainability, that could be encompassing using our energy, conserving on our energy, water, reducing waste. So it could be a number of things, as well as even it's interesting talking about the health of the river. So we have wildlife. The South Platte River Park is a wonderful park, and that's an asset too. So the third area is raising the bar, and that while we are a built-out community, that doesn't mean that we stop growing, and it doesn't mean that we stop changing or challenging ourselves to go do something bigger. Our city is already great, but we can make it greater. And so really raising the bar and our expectations for what we see within our city, from the various land uses to the development to new businesses, that we're anticipating that type of growth. So I'd like to then turn it over for looking at the transformative actions.
Well, just one sort of segue from that is that you can see, I think, the organization is those big picture principles, and then the lens through which we want people to look at it, and then Randy's going to talk about the actions that then can lead to more actions and reactions and so on.
Thanks. The comprehensive plan is a 35,000-foot view of the city and the vision for the city. If you were to read the comp plan that we currently have, and you would read each of the policies, you would see that a lot of those policies are still good policies. In fact, very few of them shouldn't be there. I mean, they're all still valid, related to transportation, land use, open space. But the current plan also talks extensively and breaks the community, the city, down into 9 neighborhoods, which is also a good thing. So the current plan has a very broad view and approach to the vision for the city. And over the years, our city has done well to maintain its character and quality and values that everybody enjoys. This comp plan, I think, or what we're trying to achieve is maybe trying to focus it a little bit more. We know we have a great city. We know we have great neighborhoods. But we have some rough edges. And so we have areas that could make it even better and make it more of a regional city, because it's interesting to me how many people call Littleton their hometown, and they don't even live in the city. They live in the zip code of 80120. And so people near Southwest Plaza call their home Littleton. So I think we're bigger than we are as a city. And so transformative actions are designed to maybe focus it on the areas that would make it that much better. And of course, we've already talked about the river corridor. The river corridor is amazing that it hasn't been focused on in the past. But I think that's just the nature of how things evolve. Now that's kind of what's left, in a way, of some of the major land holdings and some of the most visible areas. And I think recently, with the advent or the push towards healthier living, more people are biking, more people are walking, more people are hiking. The trail is getting overrun. I use it myself. I ride it all the time. And so focusing on the river, I don't need to spend a whole lot of time on. You already are doing that. And so our plan here is to help direct that also. But also to get into a little more detail, we want to focus on activity areas. And activity areas could be corridors or large parcels, individual projects, major intersections. So we have the Broadway corridor, we have the Littleton corridor, we have the intersection of Broadway and Littleton, we have downtown, we have Santa Fe corridor, we have Marathon property, we have large land holdings and other areas that are activity areas that, in conjunction with maybe the Economic Development Group and Council, we're kind of at an interesting point where we have several aspects of the city focusing on the same stuff, which is really cool. Then lastly, we think we're landlocked, but we're not. So I think when the opportunity arises and it's appropriate, either financially or economically, we do need to consider whether expanding the city is an appropriate approach or step. And that, of course, would mean in the south area of the city, across C470, they are putting another light rail station over by Lucent. Whether or not that's feasible or not, we do think we need to keep open to that. So that's the idea of expanding our city. And there might be other ways to expand our city that don't necessarily represent boundaries, but represent exposure. And that could be the River Corridor Project, which would be a regional effort in a way, because it's amazing how many people from Denver come down to Littleton and then ride back, because I ride to Denver and ride back. And so it's a regional corridor also. So those are the transformative actions that we're going to focus on.
And the areas, as I mentioned, we did a mapping exercise as part of our retreat this past, I guess it was fall, winter. We will have a series of maps that are part of the comp plan, including sort of a framework diagram that identifies these activity areas that Randy talked about, that there's a sort of a generalized current land use map, current zoning, and as I mentioned, the activity areas. So we're getting to that point. We have some very rough drawings that we've done, and Dennis is taking that with staff to develop some nice graphics. I think the point of the plan would be that it be fairly concise on narrative and easily readable in terms of graphic, so that it's accessible to people who use it. And there's a number of audiences who use it. Not only the planning board, not only council, but the developers will use this document to understand where the best places to locate are, and how to fit those development proposals into the city's vision. So it needs to be clear enough and right on the right track. So it's an important document, very important document. So with that, are there any other planning board comments, anything that we missed that you wanted to add? Or we'd love to hear from council on what you've heard from us and what we've missed, we should focus on.
Jim?
Well, first of all, I do want to say that I am disappointed that we have what's probably a 3 to 4 hour discussion we need to have with the planning board, and we're giving you 1 hour. This is our major advisory group, and yet we're, I think, giving them a very short shift and having a meeting only an hour long. As Jenny will tell you, we're looking at my notes here, I've got notes all over this thing that I really would like to have some explanation, some interpretation perhaps, things that didn't really come clear to me as I was reading through this, and I need that opportunity at some point in time to sit down there. I'm sure other people, other council members have the same thing. I think we could go for a 3 or 4 hour presentation to talk about just a dialogue between the 14 of us to say, here's where we need to be going, here's what this means, here's where we need to go. Having said that, I think the comp plan needs to be in 2 different sections. One having to deal with residential. There's not going to be a lot of changes in residential in the community. And those that do can be handled through some sort of a special individual case. And I'm talking about the things you have like pop tops. that's individualized. It may fit and it may not fit, but you take that case and determine on its individual merits whether it should go about. Same thing with rebuilding a house in the site, or granny flats. And one of the things I'm very interested in, as I've mentioned before, is having the ability to have either an addition onto a house that the homeowner, elderly homeowner, can move into, and younger families can move into the house, or vice versa. You build onto it, so maybe a college kid that's going to ACC can live there and provide services to an elderly person or couple. And that brought up this home in a box. I thought that was a very unique idea. And this ought to be allowed, just like having an accessory dwelling unit on a piece of property. I think we need to do that. We need to talk about those things and to determine whether that's going to be allowed in the city or not. That's the residential part. The comp plan also needs to have a section that's dealing with as you guys said, the corridors. And we've got the three major corridors. We've also got minor corridors: Bellevue, Mineral, Main Street. Well, we talked about the downtown area, Bowles Avenue. All of those are minor corridors that we need to look at how they're going to be impacted in the future. The comp plan needs to be flexible. I think specifics tend to get us in trouble. And I think it needs to be very succinct. I think the comp plan we're living under now is very long, and frankly, I was on the group back in the 70s and 80s that helped develop that. So, but I do think it's very long, and we would be better served if we're not quite so deeply involved. Do you want me to talk about the downtown business, or do you want to do that later?
Oh, yeah, we can do that later.
Okay.
Jerry?
To you that are outgoing, you're not going to do us a lot of good going forward. Except so this is mainly for Randy and Mark, I think, and Andrew, of course. So how would I forget you, Ed?
And Kurt.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought you
We're sitting together.
Anyway, one of the things I'd like to see, and I've had discussion with many on this, was that if you could identify portions of the comp plan that, similar to what Jim said, that just aren't going to require any change. It isn't that the entire comp plan, I think, needs to be entirely rewritten immediately. We've tried that now for about 20 years and it hasn't happened. So maybe if we can, smaller bites. So what I was thinking, though, that maybe if you could identify the portions of the comp plan that do not need to be updated, identify areas that do need to be or do require an update, and also prioritize, whether it's by corridor, residential, as Jim had said, something along that line. I think that would be a great start. It'd eliminate half of the battle, I think, immediately if you guys can figure that one out.
I have a question, just so I'm clear. Are you suggesting that we identify areas in the existing comp plan that we don't change, or areas in the city that we don't change, or both?
I think they're the same to me. The comp plan addresses the entire city. So, I mean, if you
I
define
was thinking in terms of the document versus the actual plan.
Right, yes. I would like to see the comp plan, for instance, South Park. There's a lot of that. It's just not going to change at this part. There's other parts that do require a change. The Broadway corridor, Littleton Boulevard corridors. The downtown area has pretty much been addressed, I think, at this point. But there are other areas that just aren't going to require an update of some sort. I do believe that is it. Thank you.
Bill?
Yes. Thanks for the work. The goals and strategies, talking about outdoor, dynamic, connected, and those are definitely elements that are there. And as far as distinctive, it's not as much in your vision, but Littleton has a sense of place that we have, and so those are there. But some of the things that Jim mentioned about in the dynamic side, dealing with the diversity of population, and that we want to have that. What is it we're going to do or not do? Because that starts to impact some of the neighborhoods with regard to housing and permission or not. possibly extending into things like codes, of saying, it's a 30 or inch doorway is, or a 36-inch doorway is a standard, as opposed to some of our homes that have 25-inch, because then you have to deal with home modifications as folks get older. How are we going to be in a position to deal with that? And so some of those things about neighborhood, it's almost like the dynamic side. Now, question for you, because you talk about economic sustainability. I'm looking for the 2-hour presentation from you to us on how do you understand that economic sustainability for the city, because that's a big issue, and how does land use deal with that? And so that's an area I'd like to kind of come back at you and say, how do you understand that, or do you understand that enough, other than a very nice lot of multi-syllabic words that are part of that. As far as being connected, I know we think of traditional bike and ped as well as vehicular traffic, but also as we have a dynamic in our population, how do we deal with some of that connectedness that we don't necessarily have as much of? For example, the east-west bicycle is not an easy way to get through, or north-south when you get to the east side of the city, or as you're dealing with the Highline Canal, it crosses Broadway twice, at least, 3 times, I guess, 3 times to get across. How do we deal with that, where we have some very nice trail, but then it gets interrupted by a major vehicular north-south that we have, and how do we deal with that? So I like some of the aspects of distinctive, but I'm saying, with some of these, I'm seeing the words, but now I trip over what is, do you really mean what's here? Because there's some of what we don't have, and yet I'm not seeing how we actually grapple with some of those things, because those are major changes.
I think we're trying to set, again, the 35,000-foot level, and projecting that it will result in additional work that will address that level of detail, especially, with specific, connection routes and so on. There are deficiencies, but they're not specifically addressed.
Well, and I don't know if you're leaving it with the trails that we have, or are you talking about something that's more and different?
Well, we're looking at connections as sort of a broad concept, too. It's not just getting from point A to point B. It's also getting along with your neighbor and getting good technology that allows us to communicate with each other. It's a very, very broad topic, so it's kind of hard to grasp.
I understand some of that, but if some of the next step is to engage public, I'm going to say that maybe it doesn't end up being part of the document, but actually thinking through what is that next stage set of questions that you're really looking to engage the citizens on, because everyone ends up being somewhat invested in where we are. Property owners want to protect what they have. If you don't have that next set of questions about how is it different, or what's the change that we're going to tolerate or not tolerate, or encourage or not encourage. And then on the commercial side, as you talk about some of the redevelopment and potential, one of the challenges becomes to make it worthwhile, there's often an aggregation that needs to occur, and how does that get dealt with?
Bruce?
You guys may have noticed over the years that council does detail really, really well.
That's why you gave us 15 minutes.
Exactly. So I absolutely want to commend you guys for trying to, I don't know, it's hackneyed, but change the paradigm. I think what you've done here is quite good, because it is conversationally trying to get people on the same page, because it's how the downtown area plan was done, where everybody spent a ton of time working it, and then we came and got it and decided we wanted to rewrite big chunks of it for a variety of reasons. But this sort of sets the table at, as you said, the 35,000-foot level, which I think is wholly appropriate. Most of the comments I wrote down in here, based on your guys' document, had to do with probably the next layer, or what Jim was saying is sort of the second hour's conversation about, okay, I like the idea of embracing small town qualities. So, follow-on question: what can be done about revitalizing the housing stock? That's a takeaway from that, because a lot of the attributes of the small town community are the neighborhoods, not just the downtown. But if that's true, then what should be done? What are the range of opportunities to do on that particular issue, I guess, as just one example. Let me find another one. Yeah, improve the trail network throughout the city, expanding the trail system to become viable transportation as well, recreational alternative. Follow-on question, so how do you guys envision that? What are some of the attributes? And most of what I wrote down was stuff like that. I mean, absolutely, underperforming shopping centers, yeah, I'd love to have a conversation about, what, I think we pretty much know the centers. I think we need engagement. I think the economic think tank, that's what's come out of economic development. We're getting it through citizen surveys, so forth and so on. So absolutely agree with it. Next steps, is it, TIF kind of attributes for infrastructure development to lower to improve the return on investment for somebody who's going to come in and do a project, because they can take a while to pay off the infrastructure with incremental sales tax. I mean, what makes the most sense? What do people see as being viable? Because you guys have a lot of expertise and have thought about it, even way more than we have. The one, I guess, if I were going to provide any sort of cautionary item on here, it would have to be with. I don't know that, and I appreciate the thinking. I really do. I think the thought process here is good. When you talk about identifying opportunities for annexation, identifying opportunities for infill and redevelop within the city limits, absolutely, 100%, couldn't agree more. The annexation for outside the city, I would tend to view that more as opportunistic with respect to probably parcels. I mean, I think we know that east, west, and north isn't going to happen. South predominantly isn't going to happen, and we don't know about anything. I think we sort of crossed the Rubicon a little bit with respect to the Sterling Ranch concepts, which God knows if and when that would ever actually turn into a viable project. But would there be specific elements of things down Santa Fe or on County Line or so forth and so on that theoretically could come in? I think so, but I wouldn't put those on a par with the level of other things you put in here, which I think are really strong attributes of a comp plan. I would say if we bump into an annexation opportunity, we should look at it and consider it thoughtfully, but I wouldn't be out necessarily, trolling for them, per se. So I'll stop there, but I think it's good work.
I'd like to respond just to one thing. To me, this 3 1/4 page, what we have here, is a prologue only.
Yeah.
Okay, it's 35,000 feet. We keep talking about that, but to me, it's rather detached right now. We're kind of floating up there. I think what you're saying is we need to kind of come on down a little closer, and we are going to be doing that. We'll be taking the bullet points here, creating a skeletal outline where we can spend a half a page or a page discussing item A or item F.
Yeah.
And get a little more specific without getting into the 1-inch Zoom.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's, yeah, from 35,000 to 10,000 or some such thing.
First, really, there are two other elements that follow on behind this. This is the vision. You look down from 35,000 feet, that looks like a nice neighborhood, okay? You got to get down lower and say, okay, what is it, what elements make it a nice neighborhood? In and of itself, and as part of the fabric of the community. So that's the next level. And then the question is, third level, the action level. What do we need to do to preserve those elements, or if there's an element that needs to be improvement or weak or added onto, or are there trends that are pushing the neighborhoods, or residential neighborhoods, for example, in terms of housing diversity, or the commercial areas in terms of better use of the space. What are the actions we have to take to bring those changes about or to prevent changes that might be harmful? So those are the three levels we've got to get to.
No, and I agree. And one of the things that's popped up in conversations before, and I don't know if it's something, just a foundational piece, is the whole concept of form-based zoning, which periodically people talk about. I have no idea, what the attributes of that would be vis-a-vis this, but it's, big picture, a discussion. It's an interesting concept. Does it have application? But to your point.
We use it. I mean, the whole thing is Hegelian. I mean, you've got thesis, antithesis, synthesis, and that's where we are.
Okay.
At this point, you look at the zoning code, you look at the comp plan we have, and there are form-based elements in there, and it's impossible to avoid them.
I see.
So it's there.
Okay.
We need to be a little more conscious about selecting where it's appropriate and where it isn't. Adopt the Hippocratic oath, first do no harm. Well, no, seriously.
No, you're right.
It sounds like a joke, but, and one of the things we've been trying to do all along is identify roadblocks. What's out there that's preventing a developer? And you talked about, or somebody talked about, assemblages in order to make it worthwhile to develop. So what are the roadblocks? Get the community, the business community, to tell us what we can take out of the way to make life easier for them without harming the overall fabric of the community. So there's a lot of detail to be done. What we're trying to do is get a dialogue, and whether we do it all in one shot, or Jim, maybe we find 3 or 4 areas we want to talk about and have short conversations one at a time. As we go through each one of them, we're going to know better how to proceed through the next one. We'll learn as we go.
I think, regarding the form-based zoning, Denver's got the big experiment going with that right now. We have sort of a hybrid of the Euclidean use-specific with the PD overlay, which gives some tools to modify that, some flexibility, but the whole zoning regulation system really needs to be looked at very, very carefully and sort of reconstructed to eliminate some of the barriers that David mentioned. So
we'll start easing into that with that third level of how we...
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I agree, it's not for this level, but I think just, in my mind, you guys are sort of you're on the right track in terms of funneling it down to have those conversations to get to consensus at some level, which I think is good.
Consensus at every level.
I hope we don't get to the point where, hey, Denver's got a 500-page zoning code, which I've looked at, longer than that, actually, and Littleton must have that as well in order to get into the big leagues. Please no. Okay.
Michael?
I just want to kind of emphasize what some of the planning commissioners or board members have stated. This is that 35,000 foot, and I know I've heard from several council members about detail and, whether it's economic development, but remember we've got other groups that are working on things like an economic development plan, and they're coming forward. And the intent is not to have this document be the master plan, be the end-all solution, and I think that's what you're hearing over here, is we want to get to a level of detail. But if we're really trying to get, it is not our intent as staff at least to have all the implementation components within this document. We'll never get it adopted. What we want is this to be 35,000 feet and end up with something, and I'm going to just use this as an example, now go out and do some sub-area plans for Santa Fe, whatever, and there you're going to start to drill down so that we can get adoption of this, we can get consensus around what this document is at those levels. So while you guys do love to drill into the weeds, there are other, I think, places, and the reason this is an hour is because this is intended to be a check-in so that we don't have a downtown plan situation. We definitely, I have no doubt these guys will want to come back, as you've heard, and do some additional check-ins as they have it. So this is basically, are there any substantial disconnects between what council had been kind of picturing and thinking about, or questions or concerns or whatever, and an opportunity to talk to the planning board about that and move on, and then they can do what they want. And so that's really what tonight is about. But I would remind the council that there are, implementation will come, and I know you guys are very action-oriented, but this is a master plan. So, and it's been stated plenty of times. I'll just state it at least one more time if it's not repeated again later. So, thanks.
I would, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
First of all, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for everything that you're doing. This has to be the toughest job, and without saying negative about other boards and commissions because they have tough jobs, but you all are trying to find a direction for change in the city when it isn't really clear if you're even on the right roadmap. And it's a very hard thing because the political body, the planning body, the staff body, bringing it all together, and you've got that. You're in that eye of the storm. Thank you for the work that you do, and you should feel very good that you have the confidence and the expertise to bring forward what you did. Thank you. I think it's a really good start. I do want to say, from 1981 to now, I think the big issue and change that you are addressing is corridors. I just don't think that corridor issue would have risen to the top in the past because everything stopped at Broadway, as Broadway ran into the entrance to the ranch, and C-470 wasn't there. So thank you for identifying those. I think that's the key to your plan moving forward. The other thing that's really tough for you is you would like to leave the meeting with some feeling of, well, are they buying into what we're saying, or, are we adrift still? Or, because outcomes of meetings is very important to the people who do the staff work. Just speaking for myself, I think you're moving in a good direction. The devil is in the details, and I reflect what Councilmember Taylor said. There's more that needs to be said as we drill down. But I do want to point out that corridors, I think, is the place most in need of specific attention now. We all want to believe that we're in the greatest time of change in our history, and history will look back and make that judgment. But I think we are at a time of change, and that corridor issue is going to be the one that's going to show whether we took the right lead or not. So thank you for the work you do, and thanks for the identification of the issues that you've done.
Peggy?
Yeah, thank you. I do have a question, because I'd love to have about a 4-hour conversation too. But is it possible for us to write up individually questions, comments, so at least, I looked at this and I understood I was way up here, right? I mean, I was supposed to be up there, and eventually you're going to get us down closer. But there were some global kind of things in some of the phrases. I'm not talking detailed wording, I'm talking concepts. And I thought, well, I wonder if you really mean this, or maybe you want to raise it a little higher level concept that would include more things. And I give some examples, but I won't take time. But if you don't mind, I'd be happy to try to write up the things that I'd love to have conversation about. And we don't need conversation if I at least get a way to share that with you.
Yeah, I think we'd be open to that, sure.
All of them.
I think you're going to see some clarity as they get into the next level of detail. Some of the issues you have or questions you have about where you're going to go with that.
No, it's not that. It's just as one example, like having a centralized parking facility downtown. The issue, I think, on a higher level is having access to adequate parking. And there's more than one way to do that, including, do we have a facility or do we have something else, another way that gets people to be able to park and get them downtown without taking up valuable downtown space that can be used for other things.
So
Whatever.
I think
I think later this year in a study session, we might be talking maybe about a shuttle or a circulator bus or something of that sort that doesn't use and we may not be talking about it, but it is a possibility, that doesn't use any of our very precious downtown space that could be used for retail or more residential.
I'm on my way out, but I'd like to think that the planning board and staff have recognized and are headed toward a way of proceeding that says, look, let's first make sure we all understand what the problem is that we're talking about. Then let's all identify and get consensus on what are the elements that will give us success. Then evaluate possible solutions and see how they fit the pattern for success.
That's why
Don't come in with, well, here's the solution. I think
No, but that's what this is doing, about talking about having a centralized parking facility. That's
it's
pretty
one of
darn
the things
specific.
that are being talked.
So,
Hey.
anyway, but I'll share, and you guys can tear it up, ignore it, whatever, but just so you have some of the things that crossed my mind as I tried to understand some of the things. It's wonderful what you've done, wonderful.
I think what I'm hearing in this, and I'm not sure if it was intended or not, is that, for, say, the downtown area, we may not be able to resolve the issues that really impact downtown through a downtown area plan, that the opportunity is at a more global level to consider options that might be outside of downtown.
I mean, the issue is, can people get here? Do they have a place to park their bike, their car, their whatever? Where or how close, or, I mean, that's a larger kind of issue, but yes, we want to have a place that people actually can get to, because they're not going to drop in by balloon.
So the idea of the goal of a connected Littleton could drill down to that next level of detail of identifying the solution set and the potential solutions through maybe a transportation plan.
Yeah.
Instead of a downtown area plan, it's citywide, or it's...
And there's a lot of emphasis on bikeability, walkability, and some reference to cars to get around. I think going into the future, we need to be looking at more public transit, east-west, north-south, getting people to the light rail and elsewhere, but even just within the city, other than by foot and by car, particularly on streets the way some of the side streets were today. Pretty exciting. I wouldn't want to, well, some people would. I wouldn't attempt them on bike. It was exciting enough on foot. So anyway, but thank you all very much.
Jim?
Make sure you email one.
Yeah, I'll email, yeah.
Jim, do you have a comment?
Well, yeah, Peggy suggested writing. I'd rather meet with you guys in a study session and talk about it. I need the dialogue going on between us. It doesn't do me any good to send you an email. You respond to an email, it brings up more questions. I'd rather have the opportunity to talk with you in person so we can have this conversation and arrive at what we mutually think this is saying.
But Peggy's right. If you throw a couple of darts here and there saying, look, this comes to the surface, I'd like to talk more about that. That gives us a chance to talk as a group and decide, okay, what should we say about that? What's our thinking about that? So that we do sit, no batting back and forth with emails,
Yeah, just
but sitting down
initial.
and we have some focus to what we want to talk about.
Peggy's comment for me is similar to my thoughts. The comp plan is a recommendation document that is more at a policy level. And it really should say no more than we need to improve transportation. We need to improve connectivity. And then sub-area plans or trail plans or river plans tell you how. And so the question about connectivity, we're not going to tell you in the comp plan how you're going to cross Broadway. We're going to tell you we need to connect people to other parts of the city. That's a policy. And then developers and planners come in with recommendations on how they're going to do that. And so I agree that to say there's a centralized parking facility in downtown is too detailed. It's improving parking options is the policy. How you do that is the next level. So that's where I come from.
And Andrew wanted to...
I couldn't agree more. I think, I honestly, I look at this and I'm like, they're close. No, I mean, I believe that. I think that we, and I'm sorry, Andrew, but we are, it's like a three-legged stool. You know, council's over here working on economic development plans, we're working on all of these things. We've also got these little offshoots, South Platte Working Group working on we're weeding it there, right? We're talking about this stretch of river, this type of activity, here's the funding partners, here's the timeline. So you guys are saying the river's a focus, the river's a feature, work on it. So boom, we get that message, we start working on it. That's what this is supposed to do. I think one of the things we've done over the years, and God bless everybody that's been working on it, is we're overthinking this thing. We're going so deep, we're drilling so far down into the weeds that we will sit there and we'll pick at the words, and we did that, and you saw that happen. And I think that we have to get ourselves into a frame of mind where the comp plan really is something different than what we may be used to. And, you know, one of the other things that you had mentioned too is this whole sub-area plans, the PDO thing, code changes. All of that is stuff that supports everything. All the stuff that council's working on, our visioning that we're going to get here tonight, that is all supportive stuff. So, yeah, where is the 35,000? You guys, I'm not kidding you. I mean, for me, I read through this, I'm like, you're almost there. And why are we scared that it might be 3 or 4 pages? Maybe it is 5 or 6. Maybe it's 10. But why does it have to be 100 pages or 20 pages? It doesn't. It just has to be what it needs to be, and that's it.
Piece that I'll just speak for myself, don't feel that we have a good handle on. And while I appreciate the intent to get down to detail, and probably just second what you just said there, Debbie, I'm not aware. Every meeting I go to, I find out about another working group, another corridor study group, another commission that's doing something that is relevant to everything that we're doing, but it's not until that meeting that came out of the woodwork. If indeed this is a 35, if this is the skeleton that everything else hangs on, I'd like to see a Gantt chart or something like that of all of the different parallel paths that somebody theoretically is in charge of bringing together. And I'd like to see it visually first, and then I'd like to just throw up what they have under the bucket of what we've defined at that.
Well, to that point, you know, we did a bike and ped master plan. We spent a year doing it. We spent, we had grant money, but it was $100,000+, I think, something like that. I don't know. Phil, do you remember? But we have a bike and ped master plan. Yeah, grant, that's the operative word. We have that plan. You guys don't need to do a bike and ped plan. We have that. It overlays. It's like, you guys say, bike and ped should be important, you know, it should be, okay, good, because we have that plan.
I think speaking to Andrew's point, we had been working on the whole idea of circulation and how that feeds the body, the community, and all that sort of thing. For more than a year and a half before we even knew there was anybody working on a bike and pedestrian plan, we saw the draft a week or 2 weeks after we knew they were out there. So what Andrew's saying is, instead of people working on their own, somebody's got to be a clearinghouse to say, you're going to focus on this aspect, they're going to focus on that aspect, and here's how it has to come together. But yeah, that was basically unknown to us, came out of the blue when that happened.
Craig, we can put together. I'm not sure we can do the latter part of how it comes together because it's magic.
At least recognize who's working on it.
I
think the point is at least recognize who's working on what, and make sure that somebody is aware of all that.
Just identify the entities and their roles within the whole.
So I have a question. So how soon do you want us, any of us that want to write something up for you, how soon do you want to have
Yesterday.
that? I was afraid of that.
By 8 o'clock?
Okay. Jim?
As much as you get us.
Well, one other thing I
How
wanted
soon?
to bring up with the,
Well,
But like Monday, would that be okay? No later than Monday if we want to try to do that, or?
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. Jim?
I did want to have this discussion briefly with the planning board about preserving storefronts on Main Street as retail uses. We depend on sales tax in this community to survive, and as more and more of those storefronts on Main Street change into realty offices, change into hair salons, change into spas, into offices. We're not collecting sales tax off of Main Street, and we really need to preserve our Main Street as a retail sales tax producer. And maybe it's the Planning Commission that starts this process of how you do that. I know that Glenn has done a little bit of research for you guys on other communities that have this in their zoning, and I'd like for us to take a look at that as well for downtown Littleton, the four blocks of Main Street primarily.
That really brings up two questions. One is, what do we agree that we want downtown Littleton to be? Is it nothing but a revenue producer? Or is there something more to it? And then the second one is, when you get down to the third level, detail, how you bring it about, how far do you want to micromanage the private industry in terms of what they can or can't do when they have an empty storefront and they have a realtor or a set of attorneys who want to come in and use it, and they will generate foot traffic coming and going. So that's up here, overall vision, down here, how far do you know, what do you want to do? And I think that's the kind of detailed feedback that we're looking for, that we've been looking for 3 or 4 years.
Is it our place to really dive into each of these 9 or whatever areas they are? Or is it our place to just say, this is what the canvas is, paint your own picture of your neighborhood? I believe it's the former.
And that's what Randy said, in different words. You know, it's just very general. And that's where I think we got to go to, instead of all these crazy details. And downtown, of course, is very important. But we got to stop just focusing on downtown, everything on Main Street. We got to just find an area, whether it be Broadway, whatever corridor, write something. And we got to stop talking about it. I get frustrated with this kind of meeting because for 15 years, I have, Mark, I think you've heard the same conversation for 15 years or more, that we, and still nothing was on paper. I was just telling the dentist, just write something. Just go ahead. You know, and then bring it to us and go, we'll go thumbs up, thumbs down.
See the pants in the seat of the chair?
Yeah. I nominate Mark and Randy right now to go start, pick an area on your own and just write it.
See, Jerry, I was perfectly happy if we take the golden comp plan, strike out the
Pictures are pretty good plan. It works. It'll work. But instead of talking, we got to get some action going here.
And we're doing it. We're trying to.
Well, I'm not being critical. But again, for 15 years, Dave, I've been hearing the same thing. And gosh, we've had such a great planning board. This is an excellent planning board. I think it's one of the best I've seen. And it's just so terrible, sad to see that you guys have to get kind of minutiae here. I think you guys can just take it on. When I see somebody like Jennifer, man, I think she could have written this thing, a section in a night, and come back the next day.
Well, this isn't minutia. This is not even close. There'll be some disagreement with board members here. To me, that's a prologue. Staff is patting themselves on the back and thinking, God, look at all we've accomplished. This is just a start. I'm going like, there's a hell of a lot of work to go here. I work with developers and building owners all the time. If they looked at a document that's 5 pages long and says this, I'd say, boy, that's nice, that sounds good, but there's no meat.
What's it mean?
What the hell does it mean? All right, heck with this. Where's the zoning code? And I'll, fight my way to build my project. This has got to be a little bit more than just flowery words here.
Whether it's 5 pages or 500 pages, Debbie, if in the end it has no effect on protecting what we value, developing what we need, and seeping into every level of development, developers needing to know, what do we have to do when we go to Littleton? If it doesn't answer those questions, it's a waste of paper. If it doesn't tell the people who like the neighborhood they're in, what do we do to protect it against, encroaching business or traffic or whatever, it's a waste of paper. It's got to get down to a living level, but that's still a couple of steps away. We've got to proceed. We've got a good outline. We've got a good forecast on where we want to go. We've got to keep moving forward and getting down to the detail.
I like the living level is what we need to get to, and we're not there yet.
Right.
And really, I think you're pointing out the idea that this has really got to be a living document, too. It needs to continually be updated and refined at different levels. But once we get agreement, we need to get agreement at this level. Only then can we really take that next step. So
It is a living document, but the only thing that this document is outliving everybody who's ever worked on it.
You need the agenda topic.
Let's put this thing to rest.
will say, though, that the 1981 comp plan, and Jerry said it earlier, I mean, I don't know that it's as simple as going in and updating, but that it has served the community very well for going on past 3 decades now. So it's not a document that has failed its intent. And I guess my concern is, and you guys go back to your study sessions and stuff and do what you feel you need to do, but I just feel as though the layers and layers and layers are not necessary. It's a simple comp plan. The 1981 is a simple comp plan. It does need to be updated. It has some problems. We're building a comp plan that we expect to take us the next 10 years or so. I would not ask, I think it's unfair to ask it to take us, I think we need to be a lot more diligent about updating these things. But I don't think it should take as many years to do it as it does to run it, to use it.
Well, James, maybe it was even more.
Every layer we put. Well, every layer we put and and like I said, we're working on all the code. We're doing updates on codes and updates on, so there's a lot of forces all coming together to help support what you guys are doing, to help make this thing. So it's not, the weight of this is not all on your shoulders. And to Andrew's point, yeah, all of those other little things that are going on, those are not places where you guys should be going, but knowing that they're happening helps keep you from going into worried about bike and ed planning and stuff.
I'd like to see, if this is a good skeleton that you feed back to us is worth running from, I'd then like to see the 8,000 other pages that everybody else has written that is remotely related to this, that has to get boiled down into becoming a more comprehensive document. We at no time have gone through the existing comp plan and line items.
Not recently, but we did a long time ago.
David does this on a night basis. That really bring that whole package together. I have this vision of a tree structure coming down with if you were to build a website that was to guide somebody, what would the logic be behind that flow? And I don't know what it is yet, but I'm really wondering who's Oz here to put this whole thing together. And I don't know that it's our role to do that.
I find it interesting that we have...
I am Oz. Movie's not even out yet. Don't bother the man behind the curtain.
Controlling the dials. I find it interesting, a recent trail plan, a current effort on the river corridor, a recently adopted downtown plan, and on. Various plans that are at that detail level. It almost seems to me like you would take the top 5 policies out of those plans and move them up to the comp plan, because then they would be directly related to what's already been established. And so, bottom up. Reverse engineering. Value engineering. You almost have a comp plan just by taking the top 5 policies out of each of the current plans. And we can talk about that as a planning board.
It makes you feel any better going back over the old comp plan, the values, the intentions that the neighborhoods expressed, and it was a neighborhood up plan that the community-wide was built after the neighborhood plans came. Most of those values, most of those intentions, most of those visions haven't changed. What we've been hearing back from the community is the same things. All they're saying is, give us some clarity on what you're going to do to reinforce it or help some of these things come about. And that's what we're trying to do.
That's one of the big difference, though, David. I think back then, not everybody got a ribbon for participating. Now we feel like we got to make everybody happy with this thing. They made decisions back then. That's what we got to do today, just make a decision.
That's why you get paid the big bucks, Jerry. You got to make the tough decisions when they can work together.
Well, definitely want to thank you guys for all of your work, not just your work on this, but for all of your work. We know it's long hours. You've had a lot of the public hearings coming up and the zoning issues, and it's not only a lot of time in a meeting, but it's a lot of time prepping before a meeting. You guys are definitely putting in the time and doing a yeoman's job, and we all really do appreciate all your time. And for those of you who are leaving, we more than appreciate everything you've done, and we'll miss you and miss your contributions and all. It doesn't, we do our boards and commissions, and we have to replace people, but we never really completely replace anyone. You bring someone new in, and the brain thrust that leaves. So we thank you for all that you've done. Appreciate it. And we would like for you, if you don't mind staying.
Have a cookie.
There's still food. Because we're going to go through our visioning. What are we calling this? What are we? What's in the?
Of the title that you were talking
Yeah.
about? Oh,
Okay. So we're going to go through that. And you guys. Yeah, you can. Because are you going to use the front?
Oh, yeah, we'll just move off to the side.
Yeah, so that you can see the board. We'll take a quick break. Be back at 4:45.
5 minutes.
couple months on our visioning, and Bill, I'll just let you go ahead and get started.
Thanks. Well, it's always so fun coming back, especially after that conversation on the comp plan. So, Councilman Taylor. Yeah, we'll get into that too. But just for those watching at home, those in the audience, Civic Canopy is a community-based nonprofit here in Denver, and our kind of role in communities, we help facilitate and engage communities in coming together around issues that no one can really solve alone. And so the conversations around tonight, how do we envision a Littleton of the future that preserves what you love about this place, but also adapts to the changing times, is how we've kind of engaged in this process with the council. Really, I think contacted initially back in November and then really got started back in December. And I guess just by way of kind of what we hope to convey tonight, that last conversation about how do you balance vision and detail, and how do you get the pieces working together. I mean, there's nothing more exciting in the work we do across communities, across issue areas, than watching and helping communities figure out how to be more than the sum of their parts. And what we hope to kind of convey tonight is a key ingredient in there, even more than a comprehensive taxonomy of all of the different plans that you might have in different places, is creating a guiding vision and a guiding spirit to a community that draws people together, that what some social theorists call a basin of attraction, that just brings everything together into one place that you don't have to go looking for. You just know you're on the same page. And listening to the planning board's work, as we think about what we've heard in our conversations with you, Littleton is at that stage now. I think the kind of themes and hopes for your community are so consistent no matter where you look that it just feels like an exciting time. So so we're hoping by the end of the evening we'll have shared with you the vision, both literally behind us and in the words we've heard, that has been emerging from the council, and try to get the next draft from you so that we can come back with a more finalized version. Just to recap for, again, those that we're meeting for the first time tonight, our process began in December with one-on-one interviews with the council members. We so appreciated the extensive time you spent with us, telling us your story, your vision, your sense of the challenges that Littleton's facing. We gathered all of the documents and other kind of plans that were emerging. We had this vision of really like a confluence of all these different tributaries coming together, and we knew it would be sometime around February or March that your citizen survey and your comp plan and your economic development plan and your business survey and all these different things seem to be coming in. And as the mayor and the city manager said, what this council really needs is a chance for us to sit down and ask ourselves, what do these mean to us? What's our vision for the next generation? And so we had spent a great evening with you on January 10th in an informal, casual setting, and just listening in a circle of really just more of a dialogue than a typical meeting. And at that time, that's when we brought in our talented colleague, Chris Whitman, to capture in visual form the words and the ideas that came out of your mouths of what you want to see Littleton for this next generation. And I'll turn it to Dana Bryson, who will kind of walk through what we took away from that meeting back on January 10th.
Good evening. So Bill did a great job of summarizing the relatively brief process that we've gone through with you all over the last couple months. So last time we were together was January 10th. As he said, we spent a couple hours in a casual setting really trying to relax and think about what do we love about this community, what do we want to preserve and protect, and what are our visions, our aspirations, and our dreams. And focus of what we're going to do tonight is mostly going to be to work with the map behind us. We did a quick summary of the words that came out of that meeting and threw them into something called a wordle. Who's heard of a wordle? Mayor has. Okay. So I'm just going to pass around real quickly a wordle, which is essentially we took the summary of the words from that meeting, threw them into a quick application on the web, and it comes out with a representation of the most important words or concepts from that. The reason we're handing this out, it's somewhat whimsical. This is not a meaty piece of something we're giving out. It's whimsical, but the words on here are important because the next exercise that we're going to do when I hand this over to Chris is do some call out, some actual words that we want to put on this visioning map. So I'm sending this around. I'm going to start with Councilman Cole here. Take a look at it. I'm going to very quickly talk about this map and hand it over to Chris so that we can respect your time and get through this relatively quickly, because I know Jerry's going to get on me if we don't. Okay. So, yeah. It doesn't take long to figure that out, right. We did our one-on-one meeting, so it was helpful to really, you made your point quickly. So once this is around, you can take a look at it. The size of the relative size of the word shows how much it showed up in the summary of what we discussed. So you can just glance at it and get a sense of jogging your memory about what we did together five weeks or so ago. So here's the map behind me that Chris Whitman has been working on, started in the meeting in January, and in a second when I hand it over to her, might make sense for you all to come up and actually look at it, because there's a lot of rich detail there. Generally, the map is focused in sort of three areas, and they really overlap with what the planning board has discussed tonight. You have your, sorry, I gotta use the microphone. Thank you. Is it on? Yes? No? It's on the side. Hello? Right. Woo, okay. Technology is wonderful. Here we are. This is the core area. So it's sort of, and it will, as we color it in more, as Chris colors it in more, you'll be able to see, it's sort of three circles. It's the core, the secondary circle that has to do with corridors. I heard language around activity areas or areas of change or opportunity. And then there's the outside circle, which is aspirational and may also be areas of activity, I think was the language I heard from the planning board tonight. This is what you love, what we love about Littleton. This is what we want to protect. This is the neighborhoods. This is what Councilman Taylor was talking about in terms of protecting, letting neighborhoods know that we're going to improve, we're going to protect what is there, keep the integrity, and keep what we love so much about Littleton intact. The second area, which Chris is going to go through in just a minute, are the corridors. Okay, so that's where most of this work that we're talking about with the planning board, with the economic development committee, the results of the citizen and business surveys are focused on what do we do and how do we do it. So the rest Chris will go into with that. The third, this outside area is really aspirational. What is possible? Some of it could be activity areas that the planning board talked about, where we really want to focus on the river. I heard that from the chairman. I believe you're the chairman. Yes, this evening, about this refocus on the river here and what's possible. I know the mayor and the city manager have talked a lot about that as well. So that's enough from me, because the meat of what we want to do tonight is hear from you all to get more language up here and start finishing this out and really getting some meat in there.
One of the things, just for council, we met with Dana and Bill about 3 or 4, maybe 3 weeks ago, and they brought this in, and one of the things that really started to kind of just show through was that we really have 3 different focuses or 3 different things, and even in the visioning that we did that evening, it was very clear, and the drawing was struggling a bit with that. And so I think it was Michael had suggested that we do it 3 circles. The center, of course, as Dana said, is really, it's what Littleton is. It's what we want Littleton to be. It's what people say they love about Littleton. It's the things that we don't want to change about Littleton. And what's interesting about that is that that really is a lot of the center of the city, and where the change can occur and should occur in terms of economic vitality and community stability are our corridors. And we talked about how in the visioning we talked a lot about Littleton Boulevard and Broadway and Santa Fe. And so then that kind of became the center ring. And where a lot of what we had discussed in terms of even the urban renewal we have been looking at, those types of things. And then the outside of that third layer. So when you look at this, if you can kind of look at it in those terms, and don't take it too literally, because you probably need to explain how it's very much, oh yeah, okay. But I think if we can hold to those three circles with what we're doing, that it will gel into something that is where we were headed.
Yeah, Chris.
I'm Chris Whitman, and I am the one that illustrated this, working with Bill and Dana and Mayor Brinkman and the council members. So what you're seeing up here is a conceptual vision of what you want to see the city of Littleton be. So you have to suspend reality a bit that, oh, the courthouse isn't in the right place, or the school isn't in the right place. It's the idea of what is in Littleton and what do we want it to feel like, look like, be like in the future. So I would like to invite people to come up closer to the map. Is that okay for the cameras to have that?
Yeah.
So I can walk you through this map so you can see it, because in a moment I'm going to ask you to respond to some must-haves on the map and also to these call-out bubbles. So come on closer and let me walk through. You will notice that I have some Post-it notes. If you want to sit down in front here, that's fine too. So in the upper right, in the world of visions, you always put the vision in the upper right. And this is your vision, your council vision from this document, which is a great marriage of what you're trying to do with the city of Littleton, what we've heard from you. All these Post-it notes are possibilities of call-out bubbles. Call-out bubbles are, like in the comic strip, what are people saying? What are people thinking? They could be thought bubbles too. So those are just suggestions that I have heard through the course of all these meetings that we've had. So if we start with this core, you will see residential areas, all these brown figures. There's hundreds of people represented on this Littleton map. You have Arapahoe Community College, you have this residential area, you have your courthouse building, your museum, you have a school, you have parks, you have kids represented, you have the Littleton Adventist Hospital here, and you see lots of people walking, biking, there are cars here. So that's your corridor. Outside of this, we do have the train coming in here. There was this aspirational idea of having a bridge over the train tracks and over Santa Fe. You have some business park things coming here. Another aspirational thing of the event center. We heard about the river being the new front door for Littleton. So we have this big river with lots of activity around here. And of course, the mountains being off in the west for your city, that you have this possibility. Up here on the north, there's lots of things happening, lots of development, high-density living, lots of people interacting, restaurants, and we continue on down with retail. Down here on Broadway, again, conceptual Broadway. We did represent a car lot, more retail restaurant, people coming into the city, and then with your vision up here. So Dana and Bill are going to write down on the flip chart an answer to this question. What you see here, what is something that you must have on this map that isn't represented at this point for your future vision of Littleton?
I think you can have a very small town feeling within a large metropolitan area. And metropolitan area could be within the city limits or without, but you still have pockets of small town feelings, whether it's along Broadway, whether it's downtown, whether it's in Omar South. You have those small town feelings in small pockets, but you can be in a much, much larger environment.
So what you would like to see is more residential outside of this core area? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
I have no objection to the city grow, as the planning board said tonight. There are areas that we could annex that would help the city grow, and we could still grow and have a small town feel.
And what would that look like on this map? What would be the visual of that?
It would possibly be more open space. It could be more high-density residential. It could be some businesses, but they would be on the outside periphery of what you've got shown here.
Okay.
Chris, one thing that doesn't jump out at me as much in the picture is the fact that we have some tight neighborhoods, tight sections, subsections that, I wanted to say, hey, those are some things that we want to preserve, if not enhance, in neighbors to neighbors. Building that sense that we're caring for each other.
Okay. So that could even come in a call-out bubble. We care about each other. Okay. So that would be good, because in a minute, I'm going to ask you to write, what is the call-out bubble? What are people saying about where they live, about Littleton?
And just to get back to the other part of our conversation, that when you say the core is what we want to preserve, in preserving that, we're going to have to deal with refurbishment or turnover of housing stock as a challenge. When you talk about aspirational, how do we do that without?
We need to give you a microphone. Councilman Clerk. Do we need to pass the mic?
Keep talking.
Keep going.
It's how do we have that happen that preserves the sense but allows for that refurbishment and turnover, enhancements, whatever it's going to.
Okay.
Preserve the character, not every single little detail. Well, yeah, and it's going to be hard to turn over stock and say it's going to exactly look always the same.
So concretely, would that be remodel it, or just literally some physical activity?
It could be external or internal. That's the challenge. Some
Okay.
HOAs have some architectural components.
So it could be a construction truck in a residential neighborhood that's established or something.
I'd like to see more retail, more commercial.
Okay, so this is not enough here for you?
No.
You would want more?
Yeah, I mean, there's the car dealers, there's,
Okay.
I don't.
You want more?
Mayor, do you mean the walkable, that we talked about in the visioning session where you can walk down the street and have a cup of coffee and go shopping and get a bite to eat?
Yeah, like the little neighborhood sub
Areas.
that
Okay, we talked about bringing things closer to the street. Okay.
I don't know, if this is it?
Well, this is a shopping area, they're shopping here, they're shopping here, and then, of course, there's, other retail elements here.
What about other mixed-use elements, when you've got retail, housing, shopping, all kind of in the same area?
Yeah, that's kind of up here.
Mr. Big, some big employers, we have a hospital, that's a big one, in Congress. We're missing some really big employers otherwise, and also.
And who would those be? Who would those be?
CenturyLink.
The whole South Park Medical Park.
Okay, so medical park down here? Okay.
And also some industrial folks who aren't all that high profile, but are, some of them are fairly productive.
And what industrial is here?
Something.
High-tech, medical
Telecommunications,
devices.
medical.
Okay. Because when we label this, we're going to label it generic. You don't want to label it a specific thing for these vision maps. You don't want to label it King Soopers, you label it grocery. So we can do
We have one that
generic.
please, I'm not going to say this right, but they clean the chimneys in coal-firing plants, but they don't directly do that here, but they facilitate.
Okay.
So
It's
when
an
we-
office park, essentially, we have South Park.
Okay, so South Park, Office Park in South Park,
Right.
and many
And that's
others.
where
Okay.
West is too.
We do have a state-of-the-art sewer plant that we could spend a lot of money on, too.
Yeah.
We haven't put it on because it's in Englewood.
The little piece that's missing is, we did contribute a lot to the planning investigation. We actually have a bunch of churches that work together.
Okay,
And,
so add some churches?
yeah, I don't see that.
Not
Okay.
just churches, but a lot of volunteer groups that interconnect. that
Okay,
network.
that would be a good
And that's a
call-out,
major
Bubble.
contributor
Good
to
call.
the character of Little.
Do you have the library and the museum on here?
Yes,
Okay,
Is this your museum?
yeah.
close enough.
It's conceptual, remember. This is a, not
But it has a
a,
working farm that goes with it, so that's
a working what?
a working farm.
That goes with your museum?
Two working lines.
Well, I'm hearing, we're going to,
2 mules?
because I'm starting to hear call outs, I wonder if we should transition.
Yeah, I think that's a
You have
great
something,
idea.
but
Well, one of the things that Debbie mentioned was having more businesses in town.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we've got right now, we've got an awful lot of underperforming shopping centers that have non-tax producing entities occupying the space or vacant. We've got one shopping center that's probably 3/4 of the way vacant. Nothing going on at all. And what are there is very little tax producing. So revitalization of outdated, outmoded shopping centers would help perhaps bring more business in.
And that would be a good call-out, Bubble, too. We're revitalizing shopping centers.
Show the complex and vacant.
Maybe Brian, do a higher elevation, think about repurposing. Do we have to revitalize every shopping center, or do we have to reconsider whether we need every single one?
Well, yeah, but then we could put something with that to show the potential.
Refurbing infrastructure, like replacing roads and so on and so on. So an element of
We need a street paper. We have a street, but that's a sewer. That's a sewer, somebody in the wastewater.
Well, it's almost reconstruction of roads.
So construction truck on the road, showing paving, something like that. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so now, wait a minute, Ashley.
If this were gone and had something that looked like the farm back behind the center of Little. Well, it is. It isn't just the museum itself. It's what, everything goes along around here. You've got plenty of activities around the school. Something like that.
So a farm, a garden, and some animals. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do now is take some Post-it notes, and what I would like you to do is, this map, if someone were to look at this map, you want to help message the map so they get the intent behind what you're trying to communicate about the future of Littleton. So we're looking for pithy comments, call-up bubbles. What are people saying? What are they feeling? What are they thinking about this? And it's futuristic, so it's positive. We don't want to talk about, here we have another mess we have to deal with. You want to be more open to, we love living here because we love this. So go ahead and write your statements, and why don't we just put them up here, because this is chalky and it won't stick.
One thing you guys got to add is one of the people's stick figures or whatever it is. Got to have a few people in wheelchair.
Yeah, and I do have
I didn't see it.
right here.
Is there?
Mhm. Yeah.
I have one comment.
And I do have somebody in a walker.
Shouldn't be a way that shows that river connects to the town? We're really trying to connect the river and the town.
Do you want the river to come into the town, even though it doesn't?
Either that, the trails on the east side of the river, I don't think we go over.
the west side.
I mean, the east side.
Trails on the west, we're going on the east side.
So do you want 2 trails?
Depends on where you're at.
Yeah. You want 2 trails? I think I'll put 2 trails.
Yeah, we want it on both sides. Do it on both.
Okay.
Okay, great, so let's take a minute to do the call-outs, and if you want to come closer and look at the sticky notes that are on here, as Chris said, it's a reflection of what you actually said at the January 10th meeting. So these are exact quotes of what we heard you say when you were talking about what you loved about Littleton.
And write legibly.
You can just stick them on the map.
Yeah, up there in the right.
So,
Don't stick them on the top, because they won't stick. Stick them way up.
oh, if someone's
Oh, wait. No, that's good, that's good. Because it won't stick.
Planning document too, the outside look, the dynamic little.
So it's essentially what we did with these things.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's actually something else you don't have, is the, or will be, if you have a fire truck somewhere.
I do not.
So, I mean, the community's rightfully proud of the fire department location.
We can hear it all over the city.
You wanna put a concert at Hudson Valley?
But you didn't put the railroad, the other railroad.
I wish we could do something in there to suggest the High Line and the trails going off of it, because.
So that could be a couple of dollars.
Yeah, I mean, instead of arteries.
Yeah. I'm following the High Line Canal, or I'm going to the High Line Canal.
People tell me they moved back because they love growing up here.
Just put it on the sticky. I just did, multi-generational.
Oh, yeah?
So my son asked me today, he says, any houses available in South Park, and we'd like to move our opinion back.
It's a great call, I put you right down.
What I said?
Yeah.
Right.
And we won't be including all of these call-up bubbles. We're going to be digesting them because it'll be too text-heavy if we do all of that, just so you understand our intent. The intent is to message.
Organizational. How do these work together? How much checkerboarding can you do and still maintain viability? Mutually supporting.
No competition. Stickies.
All right, if folks want to migrate back to their places, we'll leave some sticky notes out so if you have other brainstorms, please write them down.
Where's the cool?
Where's the cool?
So it's never too late for a great idea if you have other comments you want to put down there. Well. I think Mark has right. For once.
All right.
Whatever it was, it must have been good.
So one of the reasons we were so excited to see the comp plan draft was that it feels like the convergence of the conversations reinforcing the same basic theme. And if that plan was described as the 35,000-foot view, we're hoping that this might be the 50,000 view that literally gets everybody on the same page. That when you imagine that Littleton, we heard so consistently these same things. And I really think it was an elegant insight that Michael and Debbie had in terms of these concentric circles. It's remarkable how close it overlays to your actual geography, but even more than that, that notion of, are we talking about that core aspect of our place? Are we talking about that transition, that opportunity, or are we talking about the aspirational? And our hope is that as you wrestle with your ongoing and necessary tension as a council of moving from a 50,000-foot view to the details and the width of door frames and the types of fixtures and the types of details you're forced to kind of look at, that having a sense that it all adds up to a bigger picture will be your way out of the feeling of Groundhog Day. We've been here before. Why isn't this plan finished? That's what allows you to move forward. As I think it seems like, and you're at the stage where that's what people are wanting to do. And we have, I think, strong confidence that you are really heading towards that same future. And again, the comp plan, that language and the overlay seems to fit extremely well. Even to the point that we felt like one of our kind of deliverables back to you was we knew we'd be able to capture what it was you had in your mind in terms of what you want your city to look and feel like. But we also wanted to provide some types of guiding principles that as you're making decisions in council meetings 3 months from now and 3 years from now and 10 years from now, there's a sense of you're basically replaying the same intentions over and over as you move from 35,000 feet down to the ground floor. What is it that will make your decision? How will you inspire that economic development? How will you know what to fill in on those blank spots? Well, you won't know the details now, but you will be confronted with possibilities then. And having guiding principles that kind of undergird your decision-making can be a really useful tool. And then, lo and behold, in the draft from the planning board was at least the beginnings of that same intention of their three, I believe you called them, was it transformative behaviors. We thought were a kind of an elegant starting point, and maybe taking just a minute to get your thoughts on that as a beginning point. We heard others in the January 10th meeting around courage, needing to make decisions that are tough that you know now that have to be made for the future. And so we wanted to spend the last few minutes with just some white space over here, thinking about as you take a look at what's emerging as this common vision for your future. And when we hearken back to the kind of decisions you were getting into earlier tonight that you know you're going to be facing, what are other words that you would add as high-level principles that are in this same family of welcoming change, striving for sustainability, raising the bar, that whatever else you're deciding that night, you want to live up to those principles? And again, if it's useful to respond to the ones that have been given to you, that might be a good starting spot. But we wanted to see if we could kind of capture that as the last piece of our contribution back to you. So I'll give you a minute to look. Yeah, go ahead, Councilman.
You said this, but I want to restate it again and get it on the table. You mentioned vision, but then you said guiding vision. And I truly think those are two different things. And in order for it to be 10 years from now or 15 years from now, when they look back and say, that made sense, that put us on the path or whatever, it was guiding vision. And that's a little different than just saying how you feel.
That's true. So if you were to kind of operationalize that, what will help you remember as a council when you're making the tough decisions?
Well, I think you put the words what if, you put what if with it, and then it becomes guiding, because you then are beginning to look at a scenario or a reality or a hurdle or an opportunity.
Great. asking what if, keeping the sense of possibility open. That's great.
Yeah, I think what they've put in here as far as the planning board is concerned is good. I think maybe a dimension of it is balance. Dave Metcalf, your comment was do no harm.
Oh, yeah, I just wrote balance on this.
Oh, did you? Really? Good, okay. Well, and I mean, that's a tough one because that's a perspective issue, but I think the scales of justice kind of approach where on balance, when we try to look at the guiding principles to make decisions, where do the scales tip? You know, and in general, if we're doing stuff that's acknowledging the combination of what we're preserving because we've got that responsibility versus what we're trying to do to accommodate what the needs of the future community, that's the balancing act.
That's great. And that's a nice way to think about what these principles provide. If we were to look at your meeting 10 years from now, and we won't know the details, what would you want to see yourselves doing? We'd want to see you balancing preserving the past, and it's a great example of a guiding principle.
I don't know if this is part of the what if or not, but guiding the change to fit the vision. If we create a vision through cooperation with the planning board and the council and create this comp plan, so to speak, which is our vision for the future, how are we going to set up the guiding documents, steps, in order to get to that vision, whether it's tomorrow, 10 years from now, or next century?
Right. So making decisions that are in accordance with that vision, that are building the actual means to getting there. Alignment to vision. I think that's a good one.
I have a little different take on that and the do no harm. I'd rather focus on win-win. If they're different things somewhat at odds, I'd like to find a way to have it be a win for both. I mean, unless we're talking burglars and so forth. But I think there's a little difference than do no harm.
Yeah, so focus on the win-win. Phil.
Bill, I'm going to throw kind of a couple of words out there which are closely related, but they're one is community, and that we're there, but we're also an open family. And I don't want that to sound like traditional family, but it's that we're pretty rich in welcoming folks and bringing them in and hopefully having them feel like family. And we're willing to kind of go that extra mile without all of the conversation. And I think a lot of our businesses are here because they're also looking to give to the community. And so it's a sense of community that we have. Probably not the richest way to explain it, but there may be a few other flowery words around it, but that we're not looking to rip fabric of the community, but we're also looking to enhance and enrich it.
Yeah, no, it did come out in a number of things. This acknowledgement of inclusion, that you are becoming a more diverse community.
Well, and we've been recognized as a great place to raise children, but it's also a great place to kind of live, work, play. And that's if you have the right job, you can certainly live and play. If you have the right job or the right business that you want to start up, the work can be here too.
There might be a number of themes in there too. Yeah, Bruce.
I've started using the word adjacencies, and where and how I'm using it is, and Phil just talked a little bit about it, but I've said the people that are going to live here in the future and are going to work here in the future want adjacency. They want a place where they work that is close to the place where they live, that is close to where their kids go to school, that is close to where they spend their time, recreational, cultural, or whatever. Littleton has the basis of those adjacencies there today, and that's why people are drawn to it today. I think that's going to be a lasting expectation, but it's going to take some work to make sure that they continue to advance at the level that the people in the future are going to expect. And I can look back and say, there was a time that Littleton was a bedroom community. It had good schools, but it was a bedroom community. There were not that many folks who worked here. They worked 10 miles away or 15 miles away. That's not the future. So I really like this adjacency idea, and it can guide some of the thought process.
Yeah, that's a good overarching term for a number of things people have kind of pointed to. It's dynamic.
And it's an adjective that we haven't, that we've taken for granted, is that it's a safe place.
You have that call out, yeah. Yeah, Councilman Taylor.
And in order to make all this work, we've got to have economic development. So there's got to be not only internal growth within the borders of the city, but we've got to have businesses and commercial uses that's going to bring outsiders in that will help with our economic development and our growth.
Yeah. Some that speaks to this notion of striving for sustainability, too, in all of its dimensions from them. Any other kind of guiding principles? You can almost think of this like a scorecard for your decisions of the future. What do you want to factor in as you're making tough calls about land use or strategies for economic development? We've got a lot about, kind of a sense of possibilities. We've got balance, looking for win-wins, making sure it's vision-driven, thinking things are fitting into a lot of that kind of community connectedness values. Anything else that comes to mind that if you saw yourselves making, or the council members of the future making decisions, whatever the details of whatever they're talking about, you'd hope that they would be factoring these things in?
Well, I think one of the underlying strata is a general sense of optimism. I think that's a very positive community. I don't expect we would ever lose that. I mean, regardless of the decisions that get made at whatever point in time, people tend to come together because of the focus on the community, but everybody tends to be very optimistic about the community and about the community's future. And I think preserving that's, it's both an input and an output.
It harkens back to the possibility, the what if, too, thinking about the kind of what might happen here, what's the best possible outcome.
Well, if we piggyback on that, we've got, instead of maybe the word for me, optimism, is the can-do piece and the will-do piece, which connects to talking about churches and other groups coming together to get things done, individuals just taking the initiative to get things done. So nobody's looking for, well, most nobodies are looking for somebody to come do it for them. They know that it's going to require some work, and they dive in and do it, whether it's planting more trees along the South Platte or reforesting the area you're talking about, or helping serve, deliver meals or library books or whatever it is. It's can do and will do.
Some of that's just relying upon the natural social fabric you have, but other times it will be, your decisions will be predicated on what can you do as a council that will continue that will energize and galvanize that type of behavior. So, yeah.
I think one of the things I feel like is missing on there right now is one of the complaints we hear is that there are an awful lot of things that you have to go outside of Littleton to get. Now, I don't expect that we can always be all things to all people. There is, of course, the internet. But I think we do fall pretty short on that. And so to show, I mean, if we're visioning the community we want, I think it would be that we are able to provide a higher level of diversity in terms of retail and commercial. Because we don't right now.
Okay, yeah, that's what I think we've got.
And I'll contrast that a little bit, that we also have open borders. Folks coming in, and it's easy to get to a lot of places going out. Not necessarily for shopping, but that folks can come in and folks can get out. We can get mountains, golf courses. I was talking about, getting to the mountains or golf courses or, wherever it may be.
We were talking about fast food.
Jack in the Box, we want to bring that back?
We need a Jack in the Box.
So I think we can have the map capture more retail and then, but also the call-out bubbles of close access to, it's easy to come and go or it's a welcoming place, yeah. Councilman Taylor.
I'm probably going to upset some people with this statement, but I think in order to create a vision for Littleton, you've got to overcome NIMBYism, not in my backyard, and overcome the cavers, citizens against virtually everything. And you've got to, if you're going to have a vision, you've got to sometimes overlook those two elements of our society.
So when we heard you talk about that in the January 10th meeting, you know that there will be tough choices ahead. There's economic development questions. The trends of sales tax, aren't favorable. You'll have to make tough calls to make sure that you can preserve this future. And so that sense of inspiring people to join you on that vision rather than working against it, understanding the win-win will be critical. And we're hoping that by having this type of a backdrop, if you will, gives you that one page to be able to make the explanations of this is why we're doing what we're doing, this is where we're going as a community, and to build that buy-in. So we're going to ask you to kind of give us some feedback on maybe, I don't know if do you want to try to prioritize them or just do the one-word close on it? Okay. We'll do in just a minute here to close with kind of as we did last year, or last meeting with just a one-word close, but we want to just take at least a couple minutes to ask you, knowing that Chris will work her magic with this new input, we'll add the features that you say must be there. We'll try to distill these principles down to a short list that will be your kind of cheat sheet for future discussions. Like when you're lost in the weeds or things are coming at you fast and furious, just remember these guiding principles, the balance, the look for the win-win.
I at least want to respond to what Jim said. I think almost everybody tonight has been really underestimating the impact of internet and shopping and so forth. I don't mean just in Littleton. I think all over the place. And so if we're doing retail and things that get taxed and so forth, and depending what happens, even the retail is all going to be taxed and come back, but we'll see what happens with that. Then we need to think about retail that isn't easy to buy on the internet. And, I mean, like Debbie's got a dog. Some other people have dogs. They don't order them on the internet. I know, but most, but not most people, because you want one that you look at and it looks at you and you got the connection. And it's hard to do that on the internet. So I think we're going to have to think much larger and not just think, oh, we got stores, let's put people near them, and therefore we're going to have all these sales. So.
That's a great point, and that may be some of the genius that goes into the comp plan too, of figuring out how to strategize around a changing economy that is, your last comp plan, none of us had internet, none of us had cell phones, no one had a personal computer when that last comp plan was done. I mean, it's a fundamentally different world that this next set of plans will have to do, or have to address. So just to kind of wrap our portion up here, we want to make sure that this is of best value to you. How do you imagine, again, when this map is completed, and we feel like we've heard the pieces you want on it, to be able to say, we're on one page, we're heading towards this same future, and we've come up with a list of short distilled guiding principles that kind of help remind you what are the decision-making processes that you want to keep in mind as the decisions come down the pike. How do you imagine using this, or how do we make sure we're providing the best value back to you out of this process? What would you want to make sure is a part of our kind of final deliverables?
This community is never bashful about giving its advice. And it might make a good opportunity here to somehow get this on Channel 8. And I don't know what degree of explanation needs to go with it so people understand it isn't a map of Littleton, but the discussion or the vitality or the openness might have some value on Channel 8 as a small feature.
We did think of this as your opportunity to kind of incorporate all the different feedback, but that's certainly something that could be a part of that, give a chance to have the community weigh back in on it.
Yeah, are you saying when it's finished, or are you saying you want the community?
No, I think it's finished. I think it's just a report back to the community of a thought process, of a direction. And it's not so specific that it's, that's not exactly where we're going to land. But part of our challenge as a council has been to be forward-thinking. And all we have to do is show some deliverables that we're forward-thinking, I think, to support that, because otherwise, how would one know?
That's great.
We might do an inside spread, in the Littleton report, so that it's an open, wide, double-page spread, because everybody gets that, whether they want to look at it. But
Well, and
everybody
this is
gets
going to be, when it's completed, it will be framed, and then it will be in the council chambers, and we can move it to.
But most people don't ever get there, so.
Well, yeah, we can put it in other places too. But I guess, I don't know, I guess for me, the center is really well defined. It's what we have. The circle around it is some of what we talked about wanting. What confuses me a little is up on the very top, we have that 5-6-story apartment building. That indicates existing, for me, in the north area, because we don't have that elsewhere, nor do I think we want something like that elsewhere. But then right next to it is what we talked about in terms of new retail, storefront, ethnicity along Littleton Boulevard with the housing behind it. So I'm not sure that I have a disconnect on that one. And then I guess on the one that's even further out, I have somewhat of a disconnect in that we have auto, which is really what we already have. And I'm not trying to be too literal on it. I'm just trying to do my concentric circles out. And because I think the outside should be those crazy council people. Look, what are they thinking, right? And it's not. Maybe we're just not crazy council people who go there.
And part of that, if you wanted to put something out there a little bit further, more of a healthcare campus, would be something that, certainly could happen. It's hard to take retail and say you want more vibrancy, because that's where we're coming from, or, that's where we're trying to build to, as opposed to just putting vibrant retail gathering spaces might be another piece that we've talked about, where folks come to. Some of what's missing is, part of what Peggy talked about, at least if I would take it, is a Wi-Fi electronically connected, we don't have a council, everyone votes individually for what we do. Wi-Fi, piece.
That's interesting.
Dave, why don't you come up here use one of the mics if you want to dive in.
I want to keep this brief. I know, Mark, I know. I'm going to keep it. Nobody believes that anymore. Somebody asked me early on in this session, well, what's this whole visioning thing council's going through? What's the value in it? And I'm going to tell you, after sitting here listening to it tonight, what I have to say is, you've just done in, how long you been working on this now?
2 months.
2 months? You've just made the progression in 2 months that the Planning Commission and Planning Board has spent the last 4 to 5 years doing on a summary level. There isn't an element up here, there isn't a word being thrown out here or a concept being thrown out here that we haven't considered, investigated, tried to figure out how they link together, how one affects the other, what the unintended consequences are. That's interesting to me in a general sense, but what it really is encouraging. Because what it says is, for the first time, I have a feeling that council and community development and the planning board are beginning to share a common vision, and this is at the 35,000 square foot level.
Let's stop right now.
And that's the first positive words you've heard from me in a long time. But seriously, that's what I see as being the major benefit of this. It's gotten everybody to see the same things on a summary level. Now all we have to do is decide how we put those different elements together, area by area, and what we do to bring it about. So I'm very pleased. I wasn't going to stay here for this tonight. I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing. So thank you.
Thank you.
That's a great.
And I was going to sort of make a somewhat similar observation that a lot of to what Dave said, because essentially both of what Planning Board did and what you guys are doing, it is at that level, but I guess it begs the question, and sort of like we discussed when they were up, in terms of you guys closing the loop or providing value, then some sort of framework for helping us to start figuring out what the next steps are. How do we eat the elephant? I mean, it's basically, it's all there. What they're giving us is really good. What you guys are giving us is really good. But at some point, you've got to pick something. It is that the quote unquote the next layer, which he was saying as well. So I mean, there's a way to do that, because again, our absolutely no disrespect intended, but our history is we like to see this and get right down into the weeds of granularity. So what exactly is the framework that the next level should be digested at? And that would be helpful in terms of helping people manage the complex process that both groups are coming at from different directions. They're both sort of coming to the same
Take the word
point.
complex out of that.
Complex?
Process. Don't add the word complex to it.
Okay.
Good, Dan.
Wait. When do you want to
Strike that from the record.
take complex?
Strike it out.
Yeah, strike complex.
Councilman Taylor?
Next time.
Oh, good. Get Doug. Doug can edit that out of the tape.
It's one of the things I said at a recent council meeting, that what is inconceivable in one generation is indispensable in the next. And I think back to what Peggy said a while ago about being digitally and electronically connected. Generation before didn't conceive that. What's the next generation going to be? Right now, it is, with our younger generation, it's almost indispensable they have that connection. The next generation, what's it going to be? It's very hard to predict.
Great point. And on that sobering, wise thought, we will close with, as we did before, just to capture one word, especially, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that was our feeling of excitement of seeing the draft comp plan, this sense of true convergence. Reminds me of that Norman McLean line that, you know, pretty soon all things come together and a river runs through it. It's a great line and very fitting for Littleton, that these different things really are coming together. It's an exciting time for your council. One word that kind of sums up what you hope to recall from these processes in the distant future at 10 o'clock at night when you're making tough decisions, just one word that stands out for you tonight, and we don't have to go in any order. But
And if I could just add one thing to that, because I've heard you all frame it in this context. When you're looking back in 10 years and thinking, we were the council that did it, and here's why. Because we had what? So, I heard vision. One word. Teamwork. Teamwork.
Values.
Gumption. Courage.
Jerry.
Understanding.
Jerry's
Yeah.
it is. He's turned it into a pumpkin.
No, that is not true.
Understanding.
No.
Yeah, I said understanding.
Uncomplex.
There's a sub-school of thought in chaos theory that says you need to look for the simplicity beyond complexity. There you go.
There you go.
But you can't put that in one word.
It's true. Well, E equals MC squared.
Yeah.
Other words.
Integrity.
Integrity.
And you need to cross the T in understanding.
Consequences, intended and otherwise. Okay, well, in consequences, he's fine.
He's put in a lot of work on the plan. We'll give him a few extra words. Judy, do you want to have a word?
No, mine was up there already.
Should we get everybody?
You gave it up.
So we will mostly rely on the heroic work of Chris Whitman's artistic wizardry, but we will huddle, take what we've heard from you, fill out the map. There's maybe still a little bit of give and take back and forth, and maybe we're meeting with the mayor and the city manager. But we would love to kind of share back with you in whatever we'll figure out the right forum, the final drafts with this kind of operational manual of ways to think and use some of the materials that we'll share back with you. But the hope is that this has wheels that rolls it forward into these other processes that are still enduring and ongoing. And there's nothing makes us more excited than knowing that we're kind of on the same page with other things that would be moving this work forward. So as ever, can't thank you enough for always the exciting conversations and all the great vision you provide to this community. So thanks for having us back, and we will be in touch soon. Any other closing words?
Thank you. Awesome, guys.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
We are adjourned.